Okay, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We've got quite a collection of sources in front of us today. Articles, headlines, various notes, all looking at recent Nigerian happenings around mid-June 2025.
Right.
And our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward. Dig into all this material, pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts, and connect the dots.
Exactly. Help you, the listener, get up to speed quickly on a whole range of topics.
These sources really do cover a lot, don't they? Everything from, politics and the economy right down to local incidents, governance stuff, even a bit of trivia.
Absolutely. It's quite a snapshot. So where should we start? Let's unpack what this collection is telling us.
Well, one thing that seems to jump out right away is the feeling around Democracy Day, June 12th. There's a definite sense of tension noted in some headlines.
Yes, definitely. Planned protests are mentioned quite a bit.
But there's also a development there, isn't there, in Lagos specifically?
That's right. The sources report an agreement apparently reached between the police and civil society organizations, the CSOs.
An agreement about the protests.
Yeah, specifically for a peaceful protest, but crucially confined to just one single venue. So it looks like an attempt to sort of manage the situation, find a middle ground.
That's a key detail. And this whole focus on Democracy Day naturally leads into the broader conversation in these sources about, well, the state of democracy itself. And the views reported are pretty varied.
Oh, very much so. On one side, you have the National Assembly Speaker, Abbas, quoted, emphasizing that democracy thrives when people are involved.
Okay.
And Chief Olufale is also cited, stating his belief that, civil rule is here to stay, a sense of permanence.
But then you get some really strong counterpoints reported. Professor Pat Utomi, for instance, urging people to reject thugs masquerading as leaders. That's pretty direct language.
It is, and it seems to align with critiques reported from groups like the PDP, Afenifere, Ohanais, the ACF, and others.
What are they saying, according to the sources?
Well, the reports indicate they're claiming democracy is actually on the decline under the current APC government. So yeah, right off the bat, a really divided picture of Nigeria's democratic health presented in these materials.
That contrast is stark. And the sources also get into specific political moves, things happening maybe behind the scenes, maybe not so behind the scenes. Like President Tinubu reportedly trying to get Nyesom Wike to jump ship to the APC.
Yeah, that points to the, ongoing dynamics of party politics, attempts to consolidate power.
And Wike himself.
Well, interestingly, he's quoted basically saying that any anti-Tinubu coalition is doomed to fail by 2027. So he sounds pretty confident, perhaps hinting at his own plans or lending weight to those reports about him being courted.
We also see reports pointing to friction. Rotimi Amaichi apparently had what the sources call a fresh outburst, slamming some of Tinubu's policies.
These kinds of public disagreements, as reported, they sort of offer a window into the internal dynamics, maybe potential rifts among key political players.
And Peter Obi is mentioned too. According to these sources, he's called the reported $39 billion price tag for renovating the International Conference Center a, quote, misplaced priority.
And that taps right into that recurring debate about government spending, doesn't it? Big infrastructure projects versus, other urgent needs, especially when the economy is tight.
The sources bring it down to state-level politics, too. Bo George is reportedly urging Tinubu to step in and reinstate Fubara in Rivers State, that whole situation.
Right, highlighting the ongoing political tussle there. And then from Akwa Ibom, you have a PDP chieftain quoted calling Governor Eno's defection illegal.
So lots of state-level maneuvering and legal angles being reported.
Exactly. Which brings us to the courts. The sources mention the appeal court striking out motions by Senate President Akpabio against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan.
Oh, yeah, and there was a fine imposed, too.
Oh, and $100,000 fine, yes.
Yeah.
It's a concrete example of the judiciary getting involved in these post-election or political disputes.
And one more point on this political front, raising accountability issues. Leaders from southern Kaduna are reportedly demanding a judicial probe into former Governor El Rufai.
Yes, over alleged abuses during his tenure. This shows that issues from past administrations are still very much alive and demanding attention, according to these groups.
It's definitely important as we go through this to remember we're relaying what's in these sources.
Absolutely. Presenting the information as reported without taking a stance ourselves. Okay, so shall we shift gears a bit? Maybe look at the economy.
Sounds good. And there's actually a positive headline right at the top here. Nigeria reportedly recorded a N5.17 trillion trade surplus in Q1.
That is a positive data point. It means the value of exports was significantly higher than imports for that period, generally good for the external accounts.
But as often is the case, the sources then dive into some ongoing debates and, well, challenges. The organized private sector, the OPS, is apparently pushing for the government to sell off the refineries.
Yes, and the source material specifically mentions this coming after what it terms $2.4 billion wobbly repairs.
Wobbly repairs. That phrasing suggests skepticism, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It implies the private sector doubts the effectiveness of past spending and thinks divestment might be a better path forward.
Then on government finances, there's a mention of a specific deal, an N5 billion oil-backed arrangement with Aramco. The federal government is quoted saying it hasn't collapsed.
Right, seemingly a clarification to counter maybe rumors or uncertainty about that particular financing deal.
And the central bank, the CBN, features too. They're reportedly sticking to their guns on the recapitalization deadline for the Bureau de Change, the BDCs. No extension.
That signals the CBN's resolve to push through those tighter regulations for currency operators, likely aimed at stabilizing the forex market.
We also see other regulatory moves. The FCCPC, the consumer protection body, is launching a joint market monitoring task force.
Suggests a proactive stance, maybe looking to tackle unfair practices or keep an eye on prices impacting consumers.
And one more on the financial regulation side. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, is apparently reiterating that CDEX, often linked with crypto exchanges, remains banned.
Yeah, reinforcing that cautious or even restrictive approach to certain digital asset platforms in Nigeria, as reported.
Finally, on the economic front from these sources, the National Assembly is said to be considering extending the deadline for spending the capital parts of the 2024 budget.
That's quite common, unfortunately. It usually points to delays in getting capital projects off the ground and MDAs needing more time to actually spend the money allocated.
Okay, let's move into some of the social challenges, security issues, and maybe some governance initiatives that pop up in these sources. Natural disasters are definitely present. Floods, massive impact.
Yes, the figure reported is quite stark. 180,000 farms across 30 states reportedly ravaged by floods.
Wow, 180,000 farms. That's huge. The impact on food security must be immense.
Absolutely devastating on a national scale. And linked to that, specifically the Mokwa flood, the National Human Rights Commission is reportedly calling for better disaster preparedness.
And better protection for IDPs, right? Internally displaced persons.
Exactly, highlighting the human rights angle and the vulnerability of people forced from their homes by these events.
Then there's a security situation. Troubling reports from Plateau State, 8 killed. Homes burned in Mangu.
Yes, sadly, continuing a pattern of violence reported from that region, a persistent challenge.
But also reports of action being taken. Police in Benue reportedly arrested 42 armed herders and bandits.
Pointing to active law enforcement operations trying to tackle that insecurity in the north-central area.
And Kaduna authorities are vowing a crackdown on criminal gangs there as well.
A stated commitment from the state government to address criminality.
There's also a denial reported that the Nasarawa governor stating his state wasn't involved in killings reported in neighboring Benue.
Which just underscores how complex these situations can be, sometimes involving cross-border dynamics or accusations between states.
Shifting to a different but very serious social issue, child labor. The sources mention a UN report flagging a global crisis.
Yeah, 138 million kids globally. That number really puts the scale of the problem in perspective.
And is there anything reported on the Nigerian response?
Yes, the minister is quoted saying the federal government is actually reviewing legislation to tackle child labor more effectively within Nigeria.
That's an encouraging sign, at least a stated intention.
Definitely. And finally, under this sort of governance umbrella, there's an interesting modernization push reported. The federal civil service aiming to go paperless by December 2025.
Paperless by end of next year. That sounds ambitious.
Very ambitious. But if they manage it, it could really streamline things, boost efficiency.
Okay, let's look at infrastructure services development updates. Power is always a big one. There's a blackout alert mentioned.
Yes, linked to the federal government starting crucial maintenance work on the national grid. Necessary work, apparently, but could mean temporary supply disruptions.
And specific power issues, too. A court order for EcoDisco to restore power to a hotel in Lagos.
A specific dispute making its way through the legal system.
And Lagos state government hitting unlicensed electricity firms with a N20 million fine.
Yeah, seems like state-level regulatory enforcement trying to ensure compliance in the sector.
Well, there's some positive power news too, right? Solar installations.
That's right. New solar systems inaugurated in an Akwa Ibom community, and also a donation of solar streetlights in a Delta community reported.
So examples of off-grid or renewable solutions being deployed.
Exactly. Particularly important for communities maybe not reliably served by the main grid.
Now, transportation. Senator Oshiomhole is quoted making quite a strong claim about air peace.
Yes, accusing the airline of extorting Nigerians, linking it to a specific airport incident. That's a serious allegation from a prominent senator.
Definitely puts a spotlight on air travel costs and service issues. And at the ports. Congestion seems to be an issue.
The NPA, the Port Authority, is reportedly enforcing the use of holding bays for containers to try and ease that congestion, improve the flow.
On the roads, Senator Okpekolo claims interventions on the Benin-Abuja highway have cut travel times.
So, some positive feedback reported on specific road repair efforts.
And looking ahead, Cross River State is reportedly planning a new airport specifically to boost tourism.
Yeah, connecting infrastructure directly to economic goals, making the state more accessible for visitors.
And other specific projects mentioned. Governor Sanwo-Olu unveiling a housing estate and a road in Ibejuleki, Lagos.
Concrete examples of state-level developments in housing and roads.
Right. Let's round this out with the updates from education and the sort of mosaic of local happenings that give us more granularity. Education seems to have some good news reported.
It does. Afe Babalola University, ABUID, reportedly getting a N$480 million boost for research equipment.
That's quite an investment.
Significant, yes. And EBIO also reportedly got full NUC accreditation for all 6 programs submitted, a mark of quality assurance.
And UILAG is launching a new leadership diploma with Bakari's CSG and cutting tuition.
Yes, a collaboration aimed at specialized training, seemingly made more accessible with lower fees.
Also, UBEC, the Basic Education Commission, is upping its quality assurance matching grant to 5%.
A policy tweak likely aimed at encouraging states to invest more in improving the quality of basic education.
Okay, now for that mix of other state and local items, Governor Makande in Oyo approving N1 billion for gratuities for retired local government staff.
Important for retiree welfare, tackling payment backlogs.
The Niger state governor is quoted, quite frankly, saying Nigeria isn't where it should be.
Just a reflection from a state leader on the broader national picture.
A Delta commissioner reportedly got a Kwame Nkrumah Award.
An instance of individual recognition.
And cooperation across states. Jigawa, Kano, Katsina joining forces against polio.
Important regional collaboration on public health. That's good to see reported.
Politics, again, briefly. I remember 2025 election, a N50 million fee reported per candidate.
Gives you a sense of the cost, maybe barriers in state-level politics.
Internal accountability. An Anambra police commissioner ordering detention of 3 officers over alleged corruption.
Suggests internal disciplinary actions being reported.
Katsina governor suspending an NRTW chair after a road closure alert issue.
State intervention in transport union matters.
In Io Tour, enforcing certification for hotels in Lagos tied to tourism.
A push for standards in the hospitality sector.
And local disputes, too. An Edo community protesting over a traditional ruler appointment.
Shows how traditional governance can still be a point of local friction.
Sadly, some tragic incidents are also reported. A market fire in Rivers destroying goods.
A real blow to local traders, livelihoods affected.
A hotel collapse in Kwara with 2 deaths reported.
Very serious safety concerns there.
A petrol tanker fire on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway near NASFAT camp.
Always a major risk on those key highways.
And finally, an international case. A U.S. court jailing a Nigerian for the sextortion of a teen girl.
A serious cross-border crime with severe consequences.
Wow. Okay, that really is an incredible amount of ground we've covered just from this one collection of sources.
It really is.
When you step back and look at it, all the political temperature around Democracy Day, those contrasting views on democracy's health, the economic figures like the trade surplus versus, say, the refinery debates, the huge impact of floods, the security efforts and challenges, the civil service going paperless maybe, power grid issues, transport claims, and then all those specific local stories. It just paints such a complex, dynamic picture of Nigeria right now.
It really does. You see high-level policy, national trends, but also very specific localized events all happening concurrently. Politics, economy, society, security, it's all intertwined.
And that's why diving into these sources like this matters, isn't it? Because all these different headlines, these data points, they connect back to the governance affecting your life, the economy impacting livelihoods, community safety, infrastructure development, even things like education quality and local services.
Exactly. It helps you see the bigger picture, the different facets of what the country is dealing with, beyond just one single news cycle or issue.
Definitely a lot to take in. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on after all this. Given this whole mix, the political currents, the economic signals, the social and security challenges, all these local happenings we've touched on from the sources, what single issue do you personally think stands out as the most critical for Nigeria's progress right at this moment? And perhaps why? Something to mull over as you reflect on this deep dive.